Hey folks, welcome to part two of this tutorial on PHP. Today we're going to be covering decision making. We're going to go over the if else, if else, and the switch options. If you are a programmer, if you program in especially in C, obviously, or JavaScript, something you're probably familiar with all these because they're very similar. But if not, if you have never programmed in your life, don't worry. I'm going to go over these examples in a way that makes sense and how you can use them. Um, we're also going to be looking into loops. There's a while, the do while, the for, and the for each, which is for each is a different type of for loop, but I always call it as a sub loop of the for loop. But that's just me. Anyways, it is different because it works strictly with arrays. And so we're going to go into loops. And of course, we're going to look into arrays. We're going to look into the basics of arrays. And the next tutorial, I'm going to cover array functions, but for today, we're looking into arrays only. Um, and then we're going to look into functions, how to make your own functions. We know that there's over 1,000 built-in functions in um, PHP, but we're gonna go into how to make your own functions. And I'm going to cover also the date and times because I think those two functions are useful, as well as how to include external files in PHP. It should be fun there's about 15 examples that I got for this video. I hope you enjoy them. And so let's get to it. All right, folks. So here we are in our with our first exercise. I'm going to go ahead and enter my data. Now you notice that as soon as I put in the information on the left panel, the results show up in the right panel. So I'm going to go ahead and explain this. This is the if statement. Here's my PHP. And then the ending on the PHP. I have two variables, A and S, or $A and $S. For practical purposes, I won't mention the dollar signs, but it's requirement that they start with the dollar sign. Is if you've learned something in PHP, is something for variables, they'll start with the dollar sign. So the first one's an integer, number 5, and S is any string. Any string can be anything. Again, this is the if statement. Okay, so here's my if, and I'm using this double equal. This means equals. If A equals to 5, do this. And of course it is. A equals 5. If I put 6 here, then it doesn't do it. But at 5, it does. And that's the answer right there. A equals 5. Therefore, A equal to 5 is true. In an if statement, if the condition is true, it will do the block of code inside the brackets. The second one, I'm saying, look, what is S? S is any string right there. If S not equal to XYZ, echo this, right? Do this set of commands right here. Now, S equals any string. There's it is, any string right there. Therefore, S not equals to XYZ is also true. This is a correct statement because it is not equal to XYZ. Therefore, execute this. So it doesn't have to be equal. It could be not equal. As long as that condition is true, then it will do the block of code. So that is the if statement. But what happens when we want to do something, whether it's a true or a false? So let's do that. I'm going to do my second example here. And that is the if else statement. Again, here's my A equals 5, my S equals any string. Now look at the condition that I'm putting here. I'm putting if $A greater than 5, which is not because A equals 5, then you're going to display this A equals to 5, but it's not. So then the else says, okay, so then equals this. A is not greater than 5. A is not greater than 5 because it isn't. The same thing happens with this other statement. I'm saying, look, if S equals to XYZ, but it's not. It is a false statement. So therefore it goes to the else. Else S is actually, and then I put in any string. See, it says any string right here, which is any string right here, right? $S inside my quotes refers to this variable $S, which is any string, and that puts it over here, okay? If I wanted to put in a bracket here and a bracket there, see? Any string in between brackets because this $S is $S here. So that is how the else works. So if something, a condition, and by the way, the condition could be anything, and we'll see in our next statement. My next example, we see a combination of things, which is the else if statement. We have if and else, but what if I wanted to ask for something else? What if I have another condition? Let me erase my text, and then I'm going to do this here. Okay, now look at what I got here. Basically, I'm saying, look, time hour equals to 9. Don't worry about what this number is. It could be any time. Here I'm putting in what it is. It's an hour military time, which is 9. It should be 0900, but don't worry about that for now. Now I have if the time hour greater than equals to 6, and here's my double, and less than 12, echo good morning. So it does. It is between 6 and 12. It is 9. What if it was 19? Is it greater than equals to 6? Yes. Is it less than 12? No. So therefore, this whole condition is false. Remember, I have the double and here, and it is not true. So then, instead of doing a false, I'm saying, look, okay, it wasn't this. Is it greater than or equal to 12 and less than 18? Well, it isn't. Let's say I'll put 17 here. It would have said good afternoon right there. But I put in 19. So it didn't go here. So now I'm saying, okay, well, what if, else if, is it greater than or equals to 18 and also less than 24? Yes, it is. So now it echoes good evening. And that's our answer right there, good evening. Then at the very end, I put in my else. Otherwise, if it's none of these, do this and it'll be good night. So if I put in, let's say 4, it'll be good night. 4 in the morning or 2 in the morning. It'll be good night. It's time to go to sleep, right? That is the if, else statement. These three go hand in hand. I could easily say that the if, else statement is a one full set of statement, of one statement, where the else if and the else are, how would you say this? Optional, right? I mean, I could say that, but in reality, they are different, right? They're different. In some books, you may see something like, they will say like if condition and then executable code, right? And then you see, when you see the square brackets, it means optional. Else if condition executable code, and you see the 3 dots, meaning it could repeat itself, and then else, and then executable code. And that will be how you can see it in some books. You know, so there's a condition, do this, optional, else if condition, execute this, and you can repeat it, there's the 3 dots, or you can omit this else and just jump to the else, which is also optional, executable code. That is the other way you can see this in some books, but you have the if condition, else if, and else. But sometimes you notice how I use two else ifs, and we start with an if, two, three conditions, and then a fourth one here. What if I had a lot of conditions? The truth is uh, that it, sometimes it's not practical. Let me leave it at that. It is not practical. In those cases, we might want to use a switch. Switch is another way of doing decision making. I'm going to get my switch code and pop it in here. And there's three examples of switches here. We'll start with the first one. This is the switch statement. The first example is all the way to here, okay? All the way, this part right there. That's my first example. I'm doing three variables. First, I'm doing A equals apple, B equals 3, and C equals 83. 83 is just an integer, but it is, think about a grade, 83%, because that's what I'm going to use it for. Here's my H2 switch statement example number 1, which is this. Just to distinguish, I can do style equals color equals red. And color equals red. I don't want to start doing that. I'm not going to do styles. I'm just messing here. Okay. So anyways, here we got my switch statement. Well, actually, I do want to put it. So I got it. Okay, never mind. Style equals color red. And there it is. That's my first example. So here's my switch. Now I'm comparing the variable A. Here's A. A equals apple. So now I'm saying case, if A equals apple, do this code. And it could be multiple codes. I can put whatever. And this case gonna put the word apple. And then I'm using the word break to get out of the switch. Break gets out of the switch. I could have done this. Right? It's still gonna go on. So is it a banana? No. Is it a pear? No. Is it an apple? Yeah. Oh, do this. This fruit is an apple. And there it is. Okay. And then it breaks out. If it's none of these, it's not a fruit. So if I put here kiwi backwards, kiwi is not a fruit. See, it's not a fruit because the default means it's none of the cases. The default is whatever else. I'm going to put the apple back in here. Let's do the second example. The switch is this one here. Now, I'm switching here A, which is not what I want. I did this on purpose. I'm going to go ahead and put here style equals color colon blue. Just so we know which one's the second example. And what I really want to do here is B. All right. So in this particular case example, look how I notice how I put case 1 and then case 2. If it's 1 or 2, do this and then break. Is B equals 3. So it's not 1 or 2. Then I'm saying if it's 3 or 4, do this. And that's the one that's actually displaying right here. Right? That's displaying. And then and there's also a default. Again, you can put in cases 1, 2. I can do case 9. It doesn't really matter. Let's say I didn't want to do case 3 here. So, and I'm going to do case 11, case 3. And I'm going to do echo value of B is 3. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to break. There we go. So now the value of B is 3. There it is. I put a capital B, but it doesn't matter. Value of B is 3. The third example that we have for, I'm going to do a total different set of variables here. And I'll leave this in blank. I have 3 variables, R1, R2, and R3. And I'm using the function range, okay? Range, and the first one is going to be between 91 and 100. 81 for the second one, and 90, 71, and 80, okay? Those are my 3 ranges, R1, R2, and R3. So each one of them is an array of numbers between the first value and the last value inside this function. Okay, so now I'm doing switch true. True is automatically true, it's gonna do it. If I do false, it would never do it, so it has to be true. I'm not doing a thing here. Instead, I'm saying, look, just go and find. In array means if it finds this as the array and this is the range. I'm sorry, this is the variable and this is the array. So I'm saying, look, if it finds in the array the value of C, which C equals what? 83, right there. And it's inside of the range of R1, which is between 91 and 100, you got an A. But that's not the case. C is 83. So it's where's 83 in this ranges? Well, it's in the R2, right? 83 is between 81 and 90. So in the second one, in array with my variable of 83 in the range between 81 and 90, echo you gotta be, and that's exactly what it's printing right here. And then break. And otherwise you have failed, right? If I make C 63, you failed, right? Because it didn't find it in any of the arrays, so that's the answer. And that's how you use the switch. Very easy to use. There's a code on the screen so you can use it as you please. And hopefully this has helped understand how the switch works. Now it is time to get into loops. And here's the first loop. It's called the while loop in PHP. The while is actually a loop that is in every programming language that I think of. There's a while loop. And there's always this counterpart, the do while, which is the next one. In Pascal, it's probably the only one where it's different. There's a repeat until. But other than that, is the same loops. So here we have a variable, num, which equals to 10. That's my variable. And then I have while a condition. While the condition happens, do this. Now, what happens here? First of all, I'm saying, look, while num, and then I'm decreasing the number of variable num greater than 0, but it starts at 10. Starts at 10. Display the number num. So if I put -10 here, it never prints anything. If I do -1, even if I do a 0, it should not do anything. But when I do 10, it does. Is 10 greater than 0? Absolutely. But then I decrement it by 1. So now it's 9. So it starts with 9. Then it goes and asks for the same condition again, and the same condition again, and the same condition again, until it is no longer true. Then it exits. That is how this works. Now, let's say I want to do I'm gonna put in here another. I'm gonna echo. I'm gonna put in a echo this, and I'm gonna put the do while loop. Before I do that, I do need to do this again so you can see the difference. Otherwise, you're not going to see the difference. There we go. So number equals 10 while the number is greater than 0, decrement by 1, but print the number, and there that's from 9 to 0. Now I'm saying do execute the code, nums 10 again, right there. Execute the code, and then after I've executed at least once, do my condition. Number decreased by 1 greater than 0. So it's going to print from 10 to 0. If I do this, it does it all the way to -1. How about that? Because it's incrementing, it's doing this loop. So what's the difference between the while and do while? The biggest difference is that this can actually never happen. See, if I put 0, it doesn't do anything. It compares it first, and if it's true, it executes the code. Here, on the other hand, it does it. It doesn't matter what this is. Okay, it doesn't really matter. It's gonna do it. In fact, if I do this here, it automatically puts -1. What was the value after it exit here? 0, right? And then it come in, and it does it once, and then it subtracts. So it's actually -2, but before it did the -2, it printed at -1. So it will execute first and then compare. Over here, it compares and then it executes. So they're the opposite one of the other. In this while loop scenario, you will always, there is the possibility of never entering the code, right? Because if it's 0, it never goes in. Over here, it doesn't matter what it is. Even if it's 0, it doesn't matter. It will do it at least once, at least. So that is the difference between the while and the do while. There is another type of loop. It's called the for loop. And I have an example of the for loop as well. And there it is. And that's actually for loops and for each. I included the for each in here. So what is the for loop? In fact, I'm going to go ahead and from here all the way to, well, I'll leave it there. I'll go through each one because the for loop and the for each loop are actually different. Okay, they're actually different. So let's start with the first one. Echo H3 for loop example 1, which is this one. I have my for, and there's 3 sections of this for, 3 parameters. The first one is a variable and its initial value. In this case, my variable is $i, and the initial value is 1. The second parameter is the actual condition, while, right? It has to be less than or equal to 5. It starts at 1, but as long as it's less than or equal to 5, it's gonna do whatever code I have here. And then how I want to increment it, I can do plus plus I plus 1 plus equals 1. I mean, I can do any way I want it here. And I can have more than 1, by the way. I have more than 1. I can do y plus plus, j plus plus, k plus, it doesn't really matter. I can do as many. But for at least 5 times, I'm going to echo the value of I. And that's this right there. And I'm going to put I equals 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Because that's what the value is. There, like that. And I can do there. Just so you know. Let's get rid of that dot. There we go. So that is the most basic loop. You have an initial value, a conditional set, and how we're going to increment or decrement. That could be decrementing as well. The second one, I'm going to do a multi-level loop. So I'm going to say for I equals 1 less than or equal to 3, I plus plus, very similar to that one. But inside of this, first I echo the value of B, right? Which is this. I equals 1, I equals 2, I equals 3, because I'm doing it 3 times. Then inside each one, I'm doing from j equals 1 to 3. 1 and less than or equal to 3, j plus plus, and I echo j. So for 1, j equals 1, 2, and 3. And then for I equals 2, j1 equals 1, 2, and 3. And for I equals 3, j1, 2, and 3. This is a multi-dimensional loop, or they call it nested loops. In the book, you'll find this as a nested loop because it's a loop within a loop. The third example of a loop is right here. I'm saying, look, here's I equals 0. I know I'm going to increment by 10. Here, my I plus equals 10. Remember, I can increment by whatever I want, but I don't have a middle. This, you see, there's 2 semicolons here. So what I'm saying, look, do the loop, increment this way, but don't depend on this condition to exit the loop. Instead, I have a condition inside. If I equals 40, if that will equal 40, right? If I equals 40, get out. I've used the break before in the switch statement, right? The break will take you out of the switch. Well, it takes you out of the loop as well. So I have a condition, and it could be anything. It could be like, do you want to continue? Break when it's yes, right? So, and then I equal the value of I. So here it is I 0, 10, 20, 30. But when it's equal to 40, it gets out, and I never get to print the 40 because I'm doing this right here. And I can do, actually, I can do that right there. So it looks like 0, 10, 20, 30. And of course, it never gets to the 40 because when it's 40, it breaks out. Here's another example. In this particular example is different. I have an array. F equals an array where it's orange, banana, apple, and strawberry. Count is my count function. CNT is my count function of the array F. So it should be 4. I'm putting a comment. It should be because there's 4 elements, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the count function returns the number of elements in the F array, and that's 4. Now I'm saying, look, it's starting at 0, as long as it's less than the count, because arrays start with an index of 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, so on. So there's always one number below what you're normally thinking. All arrays in just about every language that I know starts at 0. And then, of course, I increment y1. I echo the value. Here's the value of f. $i is the index of the value of f. So what's going to print is orange, banana, apple, strawberry. That is the for loop. I included this other for each loop, and I think my next example is a for each loop as well. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to erase this, right? And that is the for each example. I'm going to, let me see. Okay, so I wanted to put that in there so I can go over for each. All right. So here is an array, a multi-dimensional array. Notice how I have an array. F is my array. I have my open parentheses and my close parentheses with my semicolon. And inside, instead of doing bananas and oranges and what have you, I'm putting what is called an index array. So I put in the name. And the biggest thing here is this: greater than, equal, greater than. It's like a little arrow. Think of like the arrow. So the name, we got Ray, Mary, John, and Peter. I have different ages and I have different genders, male, female, male, male, and so on. Okay. First, I'm going to extract the names, the ages, and the genders. So names equals array column. And I'm going to, in my next upcoming tutorial, I have 75 plus functions of arrays, nothing but arrays, and array columns, one of them. But I will talk more in detail on there. But basically, array column, what it does, it gets an array and it pulls only the first information of the column, or second or third, depending on what it's out here. So here I'm saying, look, of my array F, which is this, get everything that is name, which is all of these, and put them on the names. And I do the same for ages and for gender. So now I got 3 arrays off of this multi-dimensional array. Then I'm saying for my I equals 0 to less than 4, and I could have done the count, right? I could have done the count here if I wanted to. And I'm doing echo the name, the ages, and the gender. Here's my for loop. And it prints this. Ray, age 55 is a male, Mary, female 40, John 22 male, Peter 50 male. So that is how you can use the for loop. Now over here, I got here's my original, or on my F array. I'm redoing this array. I'm giving a new value. Now it's orange, banana, apple, and strawberry. For each, see, this is the special for each for loop. I call this an extension of a regular for loop, but it is, I mean, it's unfair to say that it is in its own right. For each is it's a for statement that is different from the for. But what I'm saying is for each in my array F, for each element of F, store it in str, echo str. So what is it going to do? It's going to give me orange, banana, apple, and strawberry. It's very, very straightforward. For each element, for each in this array, put them in here, print them over here, or do whatever I want in here. The other is this. I can do name array, age 55, gender male. Again, for each is the same thing, except this time as label greater than or equal to value. The label here gets automatically the value, name, age, gender, and the val, it's the value, Ray 55 male. So that is how the for each loop works. For and for each are very closely related to each other, except for each is more of a array kind of thing, specific, array specific, while the for can work for anything, right? It can work for anything. It's just like a counter. So far so good. It is time to work on simple arrays. And I've been using arrays already. I've been using arrays. But it's time to formally introduce you to them. And so here's a simple array. F $ equals array with orange, banana, apple, and strawberry. See, there's my array. You create an array with the word array right there. And then you put in the value. It could be numbers, it could be words, it could be whatever you want it to be. If it's a multi-dimensional array, it'll look something like this. Okay, but before we jump into that, here's my array, here's my elements. I don't have to worry about which one is 0 or 1 or 2 or 3. I'm just saying for each of my array F, put the element in str and echo str, just like the previous example. And there it is. I'm gonna go ahead and echo I'm gonna echo there only so it's separated because it was all together. Now here's a multi-dimensional array. Here's A, it's an array, and my array has 3 arrays inside, very similar to the previous example. By the way, when you do multi-dimensional arrays, notice how I have the open parentheses, close parentheses with a semicolon. Each array ends with a comma, except the last one, no comma here, okay? And that gives me my multi-dimensional array. So array of 0, 0 will be Ray, 0, 1 will be 50, and 0, 2 will be male, right? So something like that. Okay, now I'm extracting the columns of name into names, and I'm saying for each one of them, echo the string. So Ray, Mary, and John. So that is how you do a simple array. There are over 75 functions in PHP to work with arrays. So far, I've introduced you to array, which creates an array, the array column, which extracts a column from an array and puts it into another array. And I also did the count, which counts the number of elements in an array, right? I believe I've done that. And of course, to work with arrays, we have the for each. For loop will do it as well, okay? For loop will do it as well. If I could do this, echo And I'm just gonna do this $sign a of 0, 0. Um, oh, but I have indices, so I can't do that. Never mind. Never mind. Can't do that here. Can't do that here. Never mind on that. I should not confuse you guys with all this. Instead, let's just worry about the simple arrays. Arrays or multidimensional arrays are on the screen. We have the for each. I'm using this to print the first names. Okay. But I've indexed it, so I couldn't do it the way I was trying to do. Okay, that is simple arrays. But what about functions? It is time to talk about functions. I'll erase all of this, and I'll put in my first example of a function. What is a function? You know, I started programming, gosh, a long, long time ago, and I remember we used to have procedures and we had functions. And the difference was basically in procedures, you couldn't return a value. Newer languages, and to me at the time, C++ was like, wow, they didn't have procedures, they had functions. Functions that can be void because they didn't return a value, or they can actually return something, like an integer, a boolean, or something. And inside they have parameters, and the parameters can be by reference or by value. Well, now most newer languages have adopted that, where you don't have to have a return value, but there's no need for two different names for something that does the same. So with that said, here is a function. Function, you started with the word function, you give it a name, my first function name, and then you give it variables, in this case, a name and year of birth. Now, the purpose of this function is to display the age. So I'm going to have a variable year, and here's another function that you have not seen. This is a built-in function, PHP, the date function. Now, date is used for date and time, and is formatted depending on the parameters inside. Uh, in this case, if you put the letter Y, it gives me the year. The age equals the year, which is right here in this function, minus the year of birth, which is provided to me when I call the function. Now, I have an array, my array, and it's a multi-dimensional array with my name, Mary, and John, and then 3 birth dates, 70, 83, and 53. See, this is a multi-dimensional array with names and years. And now I'm saying, here's my for loop. My for is from 0 to less than 3, 0, 1, and 2, 0, 1, and 2, incrementing by 1. And then I call the function, and I send in as a parameter the name and the year, and it will, and then I put in a break line in between. This is going to display this. So now I got Ray is 52, Mary is 39, and John is 69. And that's how an example of a simple function. Now, as we mentioned, I think I mentioned before, but it's not mentioned right now, PHP is a loosely typed, what do you call it, language. So what does that mean? You know how, here's my function. You see, I can do function add my numbers, and I'm receiving an X and a Y. And I'm telling now, instead of just doing X and Y, I could do this, right? I can do this. You see, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. But I can also tell it, you know what? It has to be an integer. Now, if I do that, this first one here, I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna do this. Now, when we use the declare function, declare strict types equals 1, I'm telling PHP that if I'm sending if I'm requesting an integer in a function, I must send an integer function, or else give me an error. It is perfect for debugging, for finding bugs in your program. Sometimes you do a program, you're like, why is it not working? Well, you're sending the wrong type of variable, but you don't see it because it doesn't give you any errors. Well, this is like the perfect way to do it. I'm forcing it. Now I got to do this and tell it, hey, it's an integer and an integer, and I'm just going to return the adding. Echo add my numbers 8 and 12 is going to add them. 8 and 12 is 12, is 20. Perfect. In fact, here I can do, and notice how I'm using the word return. Remember, I just mentioned a few minutes ago that there's procedures and functions, and procedures will never return anything back, but functions would. Now, new languages, obviously all of them, they can return a value. So a function can return a value or can just do something. So it works as both a procedure or a function. But in this case, I can do echo. Um, Actually, I can do it right here. I can say echo $X plus, and then of course I need to do this, plus, then $Y, and then we'll do equals right there. So I'm displaying my X value and my Y value, and then I'm returning it. I'm not printing it, I'm returning it. Over here, I'm printing it, echo, I'm printing whatever this is. Returning this value replaces this. And there we go, 8 plus 12 is 20. So if I put in 9 and 121, that's 130, see? But what if, now, let me put a comment here, and I'm gonna take this out over here. Now you notice how 8 plus 12 equals 20, but you notice how 12 is in quotes. That means it's a string, but it's in PHP 12 and 12, with or without quotes, may be the same, unless this is there. Now it's saying, look, fatal error. See, 9 plus 121 is fine, but this here ain't gonna fly. Look at all the big old error I'm getting. Why? Because 12 is a string. If it was that, no big deal. With this, big deal. Without this, no big deal. So that's what declare does. It makes it a strict language and perfect for debugging. I'll tell you that right now. Right out the back, I love it for debugging. Once I know it works, once it's fail safe, maybe you can get rid of it if you want to. It's up to you. It's optional. But I've seen so many programs that use it because they want to ensure that you don't do this right here. They want to make sure you don't do that. Okay. So, all right. Now we got that out of the way. It's time for another example. And it's this one here. All right. So we can do arguments by value, by reference. We can default values on functions, and we can do variable length arguments, which is very nice. Okay. So let's do 4 functions. The first one is array1, and this is the name of the function. It's not an array. It's the name of the function. And I receive 2 variables, x and y, and I'm going to do $x plus $y equals x plus y and break. So when I call the array1 right here, whatever, if I do 15 and 4, 15 plus 4 equals 15 plus 4, right? And I'm going to do this equals there, like that. Now 15 plus 4 equals 19. See, that's a argument by value. What if I wanted by reference? No, what is that? What is that by reference? Okay, I'm going to assume you're not a programmer, but if there's any programmers out there, is think pointers. That's all I can tell you. Think pointers. Okay, so now let's go back to, I don't know, you're a programmer now. Let's say you're a student, or maybe you're just criticizing my video, for all I know. That's okay. So welcome. We put in these ampersand in front of my variable, which is $str. That means it's by reference. So now I'm going to send, look, this is my array 2. I'm going to send S. Okay. S is, we can have a string with some characters. Okay. And I'm going to echo arguments by reference, which is this right here. I haven't printed S. I'm saying array 2, send S, and then echo S. Okay. I'm going to display S right there. I send the value, I'm sending S here. And then I'm saying, look at this plus this dot equal. Remember, that's concatenate. So I'm concatenated and then add more characters. So now my string, I go back and I'm echoing. Now it says we can have a string with some characters and then add more characters. See, I'm adding the value of str, which was here, right here, s. S was sent, it changed it and moved send it back and it's by reference. So now this here, S is now the entire string. When I echo S, it's the entire string. That is a by reference, okay? And to do that, you use the little ampersand. On my third one, my third example, I'm doing default values. So I'm saying my name is, and I'm doing name equals Ray. This is pretty straightforward. If I echo John, if I array 3 John, it puts in my name is John. But if I don't do anything, if I leave it blank, it has the default value of Ray. That's all it is. This is actually more useful with numbers. Obviously, if I have a initial value of 0 or 10 or 1,000, and I can do that, and then I say, look, send a number. But if you don't send nothing, make sure it has something. It has to have something. So that's how you guarantee there have to be a value, a default value. And you can do that by just putting the equal sign and the value number or the value string. Then the last one is having variable length arguments. Now check this out. I have function array4, this is the name of the function, and I have 3 dots. When you have 3 dots and then a variable, now I say t equals 0 for each, t is 0, remember, for each, and here's num as n $, t plus equals n $. I'm adding all of the numbers. I don't care if it's 2 or 3 or 5 numbers. Now, when I call it, if I call it with 1, 2, 3, 4, it is add to 10. If I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it adds 15. If I do 1, 3, and 4, it does 8. See, it doesn't matter what number of variables I have. I can have 3, 4, 5. Is if I have the 3 dots, that means I don't know how many variables I have. I really don't. And this is very cool because, you know, once you become a little more expertise, you can send all kinds of parameters. They don't have to be the same numbers. You can send 3 or 4 or 5, and then they can be numbers and strings. And then, you know, once inside the code, you can say, well, if there's only one element, you know, this for each right here. If there's only one, that means that the other 2 are automatically can be, you know, something else. So it's very, very cool that you're able to do variable length. This is one of the most useful ones, and this one here is the most. What's the word I'm looking for? Is one that can confuse people because it reminds me a lot of pointers for some reason, but that's what it is. I'm sending a reference. That means that it will change the value. Needless to say, do not say constants. Do not send constants to by reference because your program's gonna die very fast. Okay. So far so good. Let me do some housekeeping here. And this is the first one. I wanted to do this. I talked about the date. Remember, I mentioned the date, and if you put the letter Y, it gives you the year. This is, if you notice, date here, everywhere. Date. So if I put the MDY, it does this. If I put MDYY, it puts the entire year. And actually, I can do that like that. And I can do this here like that too. I can force it to do the year, okay? I can force it to do, okay. Now, obviously if I put a dash, it puts a dash. If I put a slash, it puts a slash. Pretty straightforward. Okay, now, if I put this letter L, it puts the Tuesday. Think of label. This is the letter L, lowercase l is Tuesday. Not capital, that won't do anything. It's lowercase l. That is the label and the label of the day. So today is Tuesday. If you want time, look, I'm using the same date. But this time I'm using, if I say capital H, lowercase I and S, you get the hours. Capital H is in military time. Lowercase h is in the AM PM, the 12-hour. But I strongly suggest you put the lowercase a to get the AM PM right here. So, and then this is the current date time. Is da 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 da. That's the time I'm doing it today. So there you have it. It's a fresh new video. And this is the strong. I want to put this in here so you can see the date function. It will give you both date and time, different formats on screen. So that's one thing I wanted to include. Another thing I wanted to talk about is two more examples I got here that I want to include here. This here is the name of a file. Okay, they're called functions. And this is functions. I put this in a comment. You know, normally I do functions in what do you call it? I mean, comments. I do comments with a double slash, right? I do this for comment. But because it's a multi-line comment, I can do the slash asterisk and the asterisk slash. So this is a comment. There is a file named functions PHP. This is the path for that file on my local computer. I'm doing this on my local computer. And there's functions PHP. There's my add. Here's the three dots, remember, multiple variable number, and I put numbers. It's the same example as above, except in this case, I'm actually printing the total list. Now, this function is in a different file. This is the path of the file. But when I do my add 467, because I've included it, it automatically tells me the total is. And there's the total. So there's the example. Again, I do have a file named functions PHP in my Mac. This is the entire path. I have to put the entire path so that you can see that. That's one thing I wanted to show you. So you can have a file with functions, and as long as you have it in your include, the functions will be available for your main code. And that does not limit to just functions. It can be to anything. That's how you can have multiple modules. Okay. The other thing I wanted to include, and this is my last example here, is a code. And let me see. So I have a file that has this information, some file txt, that's the name of the file. And I only put in, this is line 1, this is line 2. I just made up some text, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this. So this is what a text file, some file it is. And I'm doing my file. I'm gonna go ahead and do this here like this, so it's easier to see, okay? All right, so here's my F open. Again, I'm not doing any checking to see if the file's there. I'm not doing anything. That'll be for another time, okay? Right now, I know for a fact that I have a file named some file txt, and the path is this. You may notice that it's the same path as my functions, but with a different name. Some file txt is a text file, not a binary file. And then I'm putting the parameter, the second parameter is an R, which is read only. And then I have the or die, unable to find the file, unable to open the file. So open this file, but if something goes wrong, and I mean anything, I'm not doing any checking at this point, just die. Die means die, exactly as it stands in real life, stands in PHP. The program dies, okay? If it is successful, it will continue to the next line, which is while not file in the file, my file, echo F get string my file, and then F close my file. So what's gonna do, remember this is my file right here, it's gonna print line by line what it's in my, I'm gonna put it right there, see? Line by line, what's in my text file. Anyways, that is all I have for you guys today. Again, this is a complimentary video that is also included with my WordPress, my blog, and I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope you follow me, like my video, subscribe to my channel, and I invite you to check out my my WordPress blog under Old School Programming. Until next time, my next tutorial, the next one is coming up, is nothing but arrays, 75 plus functions with examples. So it's going to be a long video, long video. But until then, you guys have a good one.